Hello, human peoples. You're listening to the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. To support us and gain access to great exclusive podcasts like Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and our latest show, Spiel Boys, head over to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We do game streaming, movie nights with our patrons every Friday night, and you can even commission your own podcast about anything you want. Literally anything, within reason, and we have to do it. You are quite frankly out of excuses not to go visit patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. Hi.
My name is David Bell.
Oh, my name's Tom Ryman.
I am Jason Pargin, and I don't know, was I supposed to shout hello along with you guys? Again,
you made a decision.
You
made a decision in the moment, and it's, you know what, that's what we want. We want your natural instinct and response. Yeah.
And we just watched RRR, and then there's a third R. That's it. That's the title. We did it.
We did it.
Yeah.
Triple
Jason,
R.
thank you so much for being on. You messaged Justin, was like, have you guys seen this movie yet? A couple people have mentioned it because this is by God, what's his name? S.S. Rajamouli. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
I'm sure you're not.
Rajamouli.
Okay.
He's the director of Bahubali, which me and you, Tom, we covered.
We did, yeah, both parts.
Both the beginning and the conclusion, which is what they're called. And this is the newest one. It's kind of gotten a little viral, right? People are talking about it. It's on the Netflix.
It is on Netflix's top 10 movies in the USA right now, because I just went and checked. Now, when it's been out for a long time. It showed up on the platform like I'd say maybe a month ago, maybe even more. And then I saw people on Twitter saying, "Oh, you've got to see this Bollywood action movie called RRR. You got to see it." And then I, at the time, could not find it in any category until I searched all three letters. And even then, I think Netflix assumed that I had just accidentally set something on my remote.
You fell asleep on the remote.
Yeah.
Like, unless RRR space, it would bring it up. Now it's in the menus because, like, among movie watching people, among certain circles on Twitter, everybody's talking about it, posting memes about it. If I post a joke about it, people will like it because they've seen it. But the vast majority of people still almost certainly have not. It is a foreign language movie. When I say the vast majority of people, I'm saying among our American listeners. Mm-hmm. This is one of the highest grossing movies in the world, starring two of the biggest superstars in the world. But it's, again, a Bollywood production. It's from India. It's in Hindi. So among the average movie watching person, if I went out on the street or to my family or whatever and asked them if they had seen RRR, they would think I was having a stroke.
Right.
Like they wouldn't know what I was talking about. So we do get that this is a very famous production, one of the most expensive Bollywood movie ever made. I want to, before we get into the discussion, I want to put up two disclaimers right up front. One, there are a lot of corners on the internet, YouTube, whatever, where people will watch movies like this ironically. And the joke is, look how stupid these movies are. We did not watch this ironically. This movie is 3 hours and 5 minutes long. I've seen it 3 times. I would not watch a movie that many times.
One for each sarcastically. Yeah. That's too much. That's 9 hours is too much for sarcasm.
Right. Yeah. And then the second point is, we will do our best with all of the names and location names. The truth is, no matter how carefully we pronounce the names as they are spelled and said in English, we are not going to be saying them the way these people would say their own names. It is a totally different language. We would be saying it some degree of wrong no matter how hard we tried, even if we took an entire week to be trained and to have, like, our attempt to perfectly match the inflection and accent and everything would be far more insulting than just doing our best. So please, we mean no disrespect. This is what we're going to do is the first person who pronounces a name, we are going to consider that the precedent for how it will be pronounced for the rest of this podcast, right or wrong.
Well, all right. So for the character, I was fully ready to just call like one of them just Mustache. But I'm looking at the names.
He's
I realize,
Ramaraju,
I'm realizing the character's name is Ram, right?
Yeah, it's
Bahim.
Ramaraju, and the other guy is Beam.
Beam. And then they made it easier for us with Scott, the evil Scott, and Jenny.
Well, when the bad guys are white, it makes it easier.
The bad guys are Ray Stevenson and Allison Doody.
They really are.
Yeah, they super are.
Those two people.
But so so I guess.
God, Allison Doody, she's an old pro at this.
Oh yeah, at being a frigid villain. Yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
I guess we should probably start by telling people what the movie's about, right?
Yeah, I just want to start with, and we said this with Bahubali as well. Jason, I don't know if you agree with me on this. We haven't shared our opinions on this movie. This movie and this director's other movies, I don't understand why American movies aren't like this, like blockbusters. I think, it's what you were saying. It's unironic.
Yeah.
Is that if you're gonna make a silly superhero movie, have them dance and sing.
This is what Fast and the Furious should be.
Yes. Yeah. It's like you watch Fast and Furious and you're like, why aren't you defying physics way more?
Mm-hmm.
And that's
why aren't you fighting the entire British Army while on your best friend's shoulders?
Yes. Oh, yes. All right. Well, let's talk about the plot, I guess.
Yeah.
Tom, you want to do the honors?
I mean, I'll give it a shot. Okay, so from what I understand, the premise of this movie is the two main characters, Ramaraju and Beam, are actual historical people. But they never met, and they didn't, this is not a real story. So this is like, again, from what I've read about the movie, this is like a what if these two, celebrated historical figures, the Indian revolutionaries, what if they met, basically,
right.
and
the director
became
compared
best
it
friends.
to Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah, exactly.
He cited that as one of his inspirations. Like, it's a totally... Wouldn't it have been awesome if history had turned out this way? It takes place in 1920 during when British had rule of India and would continue to rule until the 1940s. But in this movie, it is a totally fictionalized, like totally over the top, kind of wishful thinking version of the events.
Yeah, exactly.
I can try to explain the plot of this. I'm so bad at plots in terms of, like, I didn't even know this was based off of real historical people. Jason, you've seen it 3 times. Do you want to take us through the plot?
Well, it's a very Braveheart type setup because it's these two very different guys kind of living under the rule of the evil British, which I think all of the best historical action movies, that's the premise.
Absolutely.
The British in that era make just such great villains. So imagine if in Braveheart there had been William Wallace and then another separate guy who was like undergoing his own plan, like undercover, to overthrow the English. And the two of them, because that guy was undercover, the two of them thought they were enemies. And then partway through, the two heroes joined up and just overthrew the British in the most badass way possible. Now, the specifics, like the inciting incident of the plot, is that the evil guy, the governor of that area, the English guy that's been put there, and his sadistic wife, the movie opens with them basically stealing a child, an Indian child. The mother's like, "Oh, that girl's cute. Let's take her," and they pay like two pounds, and just throw a couple coins to the mother and just take her. And that's what triggers the events. But that is all. It's similar to in Braveheart, like how his wife getting, abducted and killed by the English is the inciting incident. But it's really about like rebellion.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that's the thing that is the spark that lights the fuse. But it's the whole context is, and then it's a series of action scenes that Without going into detail, I'll just say the first thing you see when you start to stream this movie is a very long disclaimer explaining in more detail than what you've ever seen. Again, this is at the beginning of the movie, assuring you that no animals were harmed. Now, were the British harmed? It doesn't say. Only that the animals, because it's basically paraphrasing, what you're about to watch multiple times is a pair of very muscular men just beating the piss out of several large predators. We want to assure you that they're CGI creations. We did not let these men beat several tigers to death, or at one point pick up a leopard and throw it at some British troops and use it as a weapon. That did not actually, we did not film him doing that. You know, no matter how much you may want that to be true. It kicks off with that disclaimer, and then it kind of goes from there. But there are several scenes in this movie that could serve as a very good climax for other lesser action movies.
I would say the first time we meet, it's not the first time. The first time we see Rom beat off that crowd, like that's like maybe 15 minutes into this movie, maybe 20. And that would be the finale, the climax of other films.
Like I think the best way to describe the action in this movie is it's if the Raid was also Fast and the Furious.
Yeah.
And also a musical.
Yes.
About friendship.
And I imagine these two. So there's like two warring revolutionary plots. One is Beam trying to get back.
He's trying to get the little girl back. Yeah,
the little girl who was stolen. And then we learn later about Rom's plot of like to bring. He's basically a double agent. He's working as a British officer.
We learned early on that he's
ranks.
up to something. Yeah, but we don't learn what it is until after intermission.
Yeah, and so it's these two like separate plans colliding.
It's really two separate movies colliding.
Yeah. Similar.
Yeah,
you know.
but like you could see either one of those storylines just being its own movie.
But again, that's Inglourious Basterds.
Yeah.
Because you had the bastards, you had the crew of the Nazi hunters, Brad Pitt's crew, and then you had the woman who owned the theater, and then in the end they collide into one crazy, just total nonsense scene.
Mega
this
revolution.
is similar.
Yeah.
Like they think they're at odds, and then so it's a convoluted plot. It's not difficult to understand in the moment. Now, here's where we need to address something right away, because this is my first Bollywood movie.
Okay.
There's some of those on Netflix now. I've not sought them out. Again, usually because when people recommended them to me, it seemed like they were kind of recommending, we're going to pretend we enjoy this because watch how dumb this is. So my stereotype of Bollywood is that they're all big, lavish musicals. I don't know if every Bollywood blockbuster, they're obligated to have song and dance numbers in there. Now, this movie does not have that many. They've got a few, but it's part of the plot.
Yeah.
Like they don't, like they and the British don't stop and like start dancing together. They don't break the fiction of the movie. But it's very stylized, and it's very like heightened awareness in the way that musicals are.
Yeah.
Like musicals don't take place on planet Earth. It's another dimension where physics work different. And this movie's the same way. It's like gravity works different in this universe, and it's just understood. It's established very early. The motions are all very over the top. Nobody falls to the ground. They will like do several flips and then roll for like 50 feet, and it looks like they've broken every bone in their body. Like everything is very big and over the top. So you guys, do either of you know enough about Bollywood? Is it like a staple of every big hit movie there that they've got the song and dance productions?
What I'll say is that I've watched 3 total Bollywood films, I believe, at least of recent.
Yeah.
And the other 2 was by this same director. So I don't want that it feels like going on the Inglourious Basterds. Like imagine watching 3 Tarantino films and assuming that's American.
What American
films.
cinema is, yeah.
Americans love feet.
Yeah, Americans are really
into
American cinema is really about feet.
Yeah, so like I don't know. I think I've seen a little Bollywood before this, but they tend to be known for song and dance. I guess my one complaint is I actually wanted more musical numbers because they go hard when they do the musical numbers.
Man, the Nacho one.
Oh,
holy
God.
shit, that one is awesome. That's
and it's
when I don't know if this is the same on everyone's, but when you the autoplay clip for this movie on Netflix is the Nacho number.
Oh, wow.
For me, anyway.
I can't believe they spoiled that. Yeah, Bahubali, I feel like both 1 and 2 also had slightly more musical numbers.
It maybe, or it could have just been that total movie, you know, both parts is like 5 hours, so maybe it just felt like there was more.
It's hard to tell, yeah.
Yeah. But we also watched Ega, and there were musical numbers in that. So I mean,
yeah, we did. So we have watched other Bollywood.
But again, we still have only watched 3 other ones, and 2 of them were by the same director of this movie, so it's like hard to say. But
every single one of them is delightfully bizarre in how awesome the action is. It's they all, I don't know, they seem to be doing movies better than us because like it also requires actors. It's like old school acting where they have to be like song and dance people too. So they got to do it all.
Song and dance that would appear to kill a normal man.
They are dancing so hard, and it's to be clear, you'll see these guys do these elaborate fight scenes. Especially the guy playing Ramaraju is doing like the Raid level choreography. The Beam is doing more like superhero movie type stuff, but they'll go right from that to hardcore musical numbers like singing and dancing. It's just
it's like if Gene Kelly knew how to fight, too.
Yeah,
it's like, wow, that's 2 skills. That's incredible.
Okay, I'm going to clarify something in a moment, but what Tom, the number that Tom's referencing. So to give you some frame of reference for how they handle it, normally in a Hollywood screenplay, and everyone on this podcast has written one, on page 60 of your script is where you have the most pivotal moment of some sort of action scene that totally raises the stakes, totally changes what's at stake. You can take any DVD off your shelf for the old people who still have physical DVDs and just fast forward it to 60 minutes and play it, and something will be exploding. Or if it's a romantic comedy, the characters will be screaming at each other and breaking up, or somebody will be having a car accident. 60 minutes in is where, if you know what you're doing in a script, 60 minutes or 60 pages, something needs to happen that totally sends the film and the story off in a whole new direction. It's like a holy crap moment. In RRR, exactly 60 minutes in, music starts. And they're pivotal because they're at this big get together where one of the Indian guys has been invited, and he has invited the other one, not knowing he's undercover, thinks he's his friend. It's actually a triple agent sort of situation where he thinks he's his friend, but he's actually undercover, but he's actually undercover still. So it's like he is on his side, but not in the way he thinks. And then the evil British guy starts taunting them about how Indians don't know how to dance because he's like, we're cultured. And to be clear to the audience, I realize no British person actually thinks they're the best dancers. That's part of the fiction of this movie. I realize that not even the most evil white guys think, well, we're the best race because we're the best at dancing. Not even Nazis think that. But for the purposes of this movie, the evil British are like, well, I've had all these dance lessons. I'm clearly sophisticated and cultured, and you brown people, because one of these guys literally lives, in the forest as like a rural villager who can't, read or write or whatever. And then those guys and the 2 heroes respond, well, there's a style of dancing I'm not sure you've heard of. And then the movie just explodes into somehow the most violent scene in the movie, which is them having a dance-off with their evil British captors and showing them like the spirit of this country you think you're trying to break. Let us demonstrate it for you in the form of dance. And it's the most striking scene in the whole movie, and it does look like 7 or 8 people either died or were paralyzed in the force of learning how to do that dance and practicing.
It really is the most violent sequence of the film.
Yeah, this is like those were each like the fifth actor they had.
It's like the hardest, like, you got served dance rejoinder that has ever been
so
captured
good.
on film. It's like,
It's so incredible.
it's like dunking on a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
It's how savage it is.
Now, people who follow me from podcast to podcast know there's a thing that I talk about that I thought was kind of common knowledge, but no one I talk to about it is aware of it, which is that in the 1940s, 1950s, the top movies in America were often musicals, right? Like Singing in the Rain was not popular among women and the gays. It was popular with everybody. Like you had World War II veterans who would sit down and watch Gene Kelly dance, and they were secure in their masculinity enough that, because these guys, like, they still have shrapnel in them from D-Day, and they're going to sit down and watch some dudes dance, because dance is universally enjoyable among every culture of humans on planet Earth in all times and all places. It is one of the oldest art forms. There's evolutionary science behind why we do it, why we enjoy it. There are animals that do it. But sometime after the rise of feminism in the 1960s, American males decided that watching people dance was gay. It was for the women or for the gays. So these days, when there is a musical, they tend to market it to women and to the gays. And that's just understood because men are now so insecure in their masculinity that they're afraid if they go and watch a man dance, then that will mean they must want to have sex with him. So in the 1970s, to fill the void of this thing that men all secretly like to watch, they started importing kung fu movies from Hong Kong. For you see, Jackie Chan, Sammo Hung, all of those guys, they were trained in the Peking Opera School. Because dance and kung fu, as it is done in a movie, not as you would try to do it to a person, is a dance. Movie kung fu is a dance. The fight sequences, the people who you see doing the fight scenes in movies have dance backgrounds. They trained in dance. They all did. Bruce Lee was a competitive dancer. He won a cha-cha competition. There's photos of it from 1959 where he's dancing with a woman to see who's the best dancer. And there was no one there like, oh, Bruce Lee must be one of the gays. Because back then, these are all manly things to do. You have to be very strong to dance. If you ever get into a fight at a bar and the guy you're fighting says, I'm a ballet dancer, that guy's about to destroy you.
Yeah, it's Patrick Swayze in Roadhouse. Like you're about to get kicked in the face by Dalton.
Yeah, he throws human beings for a living and does it with precision. Like these guys are made of muscle and their reflexes and balance is perfect. So when you see movie fight scenes and extras in the background, when you see them all, a whole room full of people doing kung fu, go look up each of those people on IMDb, and I guarantee you will see they were either trained in dance or they've been in dance movies because it is the same skill. Gymnastics, kung fu. Now, again, when people first watched MMA and saw two people fighting and realized, oh, that doesn't look like The Matrix. That looks like two guys rolling around on the ground trying to strangle each other. Because people had not internalized that when you're watching a fight scene in The Matrix,
a desperate murder.
Right. It's not fun to watch unless you're really into MMA. It's like, oh, this isn't acrobatic at all. It's just, it's a guy kneeing another guy in the face over and over again, and then he starts puking blood. When you're watching a beautifully choreographed fight scene in John Wick or The Matrix, or pick your favorite movie where they actually have done choreographed, not like a Liam Neeson movie. I mean, where they actually have taken the time to train the actors to fight. Both people have practiced the choreography, and note the word, it's the same word they would use. They have memorized moves that they're doing in sync. The guy he kicks has practiced exactly what he's going to do on those blocks and those punches. It is a choreographed dance. But because of the screwed up way we view masculinity, we can only watch dancing if you dress it up as two people trying to kill each other.
Right.
This has been that way for a long time. But if you watch now, like you watch The Matrix, like, in that first scene where he fights Morpheus, they both stand up, they do their little pose, and then the music kicks in. And some of you, if you've seen that movie a bunch of times, you can hear the music in their head. And they are fighting to the music. That the directors of that movie knew that we would enjoy watching these people do precise athletic movements to music, but we had to have that veneer of combat in order to allow ourselves to enjoy it. Okay, so when you talk about Bollywood and you say that the DNA of song and dance musicals runs through every single movie, of course they're better at staging fight scenes.
Right.
Because it's the exact same, everything about the joy of seeing people move, the wire work, the over the top, it's the exact same thing. Whether you're choreographing a huge dance number or a huge fight scene, it's the same skill and it's appealing to the same parts of the brain. It's all still done to music. It's all done in a rhythm. The beats of like rising tension and all that, it's the exact same rules. If you know how to do one, you probably know how to do another, which is why you mentioned Patrick Swayze. He did Dirty Dancing, and then to get his male fans back, he did Roadhouse. Those two movies are secretly the same genre.
Yeah, because I have nothing to back this up, but I assume it triggers the same part of the brain. Like, it's this satisfying thing to watch.
It's primal.
But it's like watching almost like this form of order. Like watching these things sync up perfectly. Watching a good fight and watching a good dance number. I feel like my brain does the exact same thing for both.
Well, no, I feel like what you're seeing in this movie is that they feel the freedom to make the fights truly more, there's like a joy to it, a joy in the movement, that they're very brutal, but they will allow them to be, it's moments that if you captured them in like a GIF and shared it on Twitter, I think people would assume it's like, oh, look how goofy this is.
Yeah.
But it's very theatrical, it's very stagey, but it's in a way that it does what a lot of movies fail to do, where every punch and every kick is like stretched out for the maximum amount of drama between the two characters. Like it will pull out a moment and make it this big, long thing where the guy sails through the air, and it's not trying to shake the camera or try to simulate the chaos or whatever. It's very clear what's happening. They don't, the stuff where they've added in CGI and again, it's not, the CGI studios there are not as good as ones you have in the United States because they've just not been around as long. So you can kind of tell, but it's okay because the movie like takes place in like such a heightened reality that it's like a lot of the sets are so big and elaborate, like you can kind of tell they're fake, but it's like that's
right.
The
it's
idea.
Like perfectly in tone with the movie, and that's you mentioned joy. That's like something I did want to get out. Was this is sitting and watching this movie was one of the most joyful experiences I've had watching a movie recently. Just like genuine, huge smile on my face for most of it. I've talked to my TV during this movie more than I do with most other movies.
Yeah. It's Fury Road.
It
like,
really,
yes.
Level. Yeah, that's it. Right there. Like, it's the same feeling I felt watching Fury Road as I did watching this movie, where it's just like every single new offering they make, you're just like, holy shit, what? It's incredible. Because that's what a blockbuster movie like this should be. It's so fucking fun to watch.
It really is. It's part of why I keep saying, like, why don't we make movies like this, is because they know that they can say, like, well, why not do that?
Yeah.
Why not add that? Like, okay, we all know Captain America isn't actually doing those things. Why are we trying to ground it? Like, why not do something absolutely ridiculous with the action? I also think this movie makes a great use of bullet time, which, it's sort of, or I would call it like the Zack Snyder ramping.
The slowdown, yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. Like, that's one of those things that I feel like I'm over, and most audiences are over. But the things they have them do is just so awesome. And like, again, it's so hard to describe what makes it work. It's part of it is almost like, okay, a character is going to fire an arrow to kill somebody else. Why not have another character be drinking water and pouring the water in his mouth and have the arrow slice the water. And him make this ridiculously lucky shot through the water to kill someone else, and you do it super slow. It's adding those little elements where it's like that realization of like, we don't need to explain for ourselves. It's kind of what I like about Moonfall and Roland Emmerich stuff, where they realize like the audience, if they're on board, if they know what you're doing, if they understand like what type of movie it is, they're going to forgive a lot. And part of, I think, what we haven't mentioned that is in Bahubali as well, and is definitely in this, is that part of what makes that work is they also just make the characters very charismatic and give them emotional stories that we are able to kind of follow and
right,
you know.
Like it does. I think with the ramping stuff, definitely, it's what Jason said. It's not used. I mean, it is. You know, there still are using it because it looks cool, but like it's heightening. Like when the arrow comes through the water, it's like when we think Beam's about to be killed, but he's surrounded by the British soldiers, and then it slows all super down so we can see the arrow cut through his water and kill the guy right when he's about to be killed. So they're like using it in this to heighten the dramatic moments of it instead of just like, you know, it ramps up and ramps back down when Leonidas is punching a guy in 300 and it doesn't mean anything. It just looks cool.
Exactly. Right. There's an instinctive understanding of you're doing it to capture the motion of what they're doing and to string out the most emotion out of it, and not look how cool this guy's abs look or look how cool this shot is. Because a lot of my issue with 300, I feel like there's a lot of look how cool this shot is. My issue with Michael Bay is there's a lot of I'm moving the camera and zooming in as if this is the most important moment of the movie, but it's on a random line somebody says. Like I don't know what these movements mean. I know they look cool. So there'll be like comic relief moments in Michael Bay movies where the camera like does a slow dramatic zoom in on their face. It's like, well, why are you doing that? And the answer is like, well, it looks badass. It's like, yeah, but it's just Joe Pantoliano making a joke. Like, why are you?
Yes. I think a lot of, and on that subject, like a lot of the successful Michael Bay movies are often the ones where the actors are doing so good, or the writing or whoever wrote it, like that, where it's all in the performances and stuff, where it's like the Michael Bay stuff is fine, but it's not why we're enjoying the movie.
It's done a little. I think it's because it's done more artlessly. Like it's like what Jason says, highlighting, giving like huge significance to a throwaway comic relief line. That adds up over the course of a 2.5 hour movie. So like you're exhausted for the points that are actual drama that you're supposed to experience.
Yeah. For people interested, there's a YouTube that no longer updates and adds videos, but Every Frame of Painting did a great video on why Michael Bay doesn't quite work. And this is more or less what they talk about, which is that he can't not be Michael Bay, even when it requires him not to be. Every shot he's doing this.
Yeah, because sometimes you can just set the camera down and let the actors do their thing. Yeah. And he seems to think, well, no, the camera's got to be on like an animatronic rig that swings around while they're talking. Right. It's like, no, let the actors act.
No, I've got like an image in my mind of Michael Bay like filming just like a dramatic scene in a living room between two people, and he's using this like elaborate spider drone camera to shoot it.
Yeah. I guarantee you that's exactly what it looks like. There's an 800-pound robot arm that's like... now, we should point out, because we've not really talked about this, the reason the movie's called RRR, that was a working title because that's R for the three superstars involved. This very famous director, Rajamouli, is that how you say his name?
Rajamouli.
Okay.
I believe.
Yeah, and then the two actors, Ram Charan and then Rama Rao, I think. But again, I'm saying them wrong. That is not in any way how they would say their names if they were on this podcast. But that's the point. Is that these guys are a big enough deal that the working title of the movie was just this is the three R's coming together. Like and that meant something. And eventually they decided, we're just going to keep that title because it works across. They knew they were going to be releasing this in many, many markets and languages, and just calling it RRR would avoid having to come up with a different title for each region that makes sense, like that would translate easily. It's like, no, this is these three guys. So the way this starts is, you have basically a prologue of this little girl getting kidnapped, and then it introduces the two stars that are going to play in Ram and Bean. But the first guy is introduced, as Tom alluded to earlier, in a huge fight scene where he beats the piss out of 5,000 people.
So many dudes.
In the course of
so many dudes.
In the course of arresting, he's working for the British undercover, but we don't know that at the time. But when he appears on the screen, he's the one with the mustache. For those of you that just have struggled to separate people, he immediately appears on the screen. I was like, oh, that's a Bollywood movie star. Like, that guy's world, he's super famous. There's no question when you look at him, he's a movie star. He just has that gravity about him. It's the way he looks, the way he acts, everything about it, the way he walks. And when they tell him, go into the crowd and go arrest that man, and you realize he sets his hat down and jumps 50 feet over the air, over the fence to go out in this giant rioting crowd, it's like, oh, he's gonna beat the piss out of 5,000 people right now. I'm gonna watch. And then he successfully does that, drags the guy back through the crowd and arrests him and takes him back inside the fence. And that's his introduction. Then we immediately cut to the other guy, Beam, the guy who lives in the forest, and he is introduced by beating the piss out of a tiger.
Yeah, pouring blood all over his body to kidnap a tiger.
They have to trap a tiger, and he's leading it through the jungle, and he has to physically fight it himself. So that's how this movie, basically, that's if there was a screenwriting class, I would show this as how to introduce, if you have two action stars in your movie, and you want to introduce them back to back and show their two methods and their two places in life and who they are. And in both cases, you can see why, oh yeah, these guys are extremely famous, they probably, their faces on a poster presumably sell a lot of tickets in India.
It's like the cooler way to do Hobbs and Shaw, I think. But it's the same idea. Absolutely. Where it's it's these competing action stars, so they have to have introductions that are equally badass. How do we pull that off? This is how you pull that off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because only these scenes have stakes.
Yes.
And the opening of the Hobbs and Shaw, the whole thing is how glib it is. And this is something I'm worried that what I'm about to say may come off as ignorant or possibly offensive. This is a zero irony movie. There is no nod and wink at the camera.
And that's great.
There's no sarcasm in the dialogue. There's no dramatic moment that is undermined by somebody
goofy joke,
making a goofy joke or a pop culture reference. I am not suggesting that in India that they don't have sarcasm or that they're not smart enough to have it. I'm saying that the style of this movie, and I do not doubt that part of it is that this movie, when they produced it, they were releasing it in 50 different languages. The principal cast, including the stars, had to record it in 4 different languages. So the version on Netflix is in Hindi. They had to do, because that is the reality of releasing a movie in that market.
Right.
I'm guessing any kind of extremely subtle sarcasm wordplay does not move well across cultures, no matter what two cultures.
Yeah, I think we talked. This thing we talked about on a Cracked article or something we did at Crack one time. But yeah, it's a big reason why Hollywood comedies don't typically do well overseas.
It makes perfect sense, because comedy is relying on awkward situations, unless they are universal, unless it is slapstick. Like if you took an episode of Arrested Development and even showed it in parts of America, it doesn't do well.
Right.
Because it's so, the way it does callbacks and stuff, and the things that it assumes the knowledge that it assumes you have, it just wouldn't work. It's not because people aren't smart enough. It's the same thing if you took some great comedy from Japan. If it's very broad, if you show me some, broad, ridiculous Japanese game show, I'll laugh at it. But if it's something that's truly a subtle work of genius, and it's, it's going to have all sorts of references to Japanese culture and all the foibles of the different classes and stuff there, it's going to be lost on me. Well, here, I don't doubt they partially do this out of necessity, but it is refreshing to see a movie that is truly straight, you are like, it's true straight emotion, and it's not afraid of letting an emotional moment, or it's not afraid of being corny, I guess.
It's not it's not afraid of being genuine. Like, and that's like a lot of blockbusters, like we were saying, a lot of Hollywood blockbusters, there's, especially in the Marvel age, seem to have this instinct where they have to undercut each genuine emotional moment with a throwaway joke or a pop culture reference. It's like we're nervous about being genuine, and it is cool to watch a big, over-the-top blockbuster action movie like this that is just completely genuine. They're playing it completely straight.
Yeah, and I guarantee they know they don't need to, because I think they know, and they lean into it, is that the type of action they do is so unique that you can't help but to laugh at how outlandish it often is, and I think they know that, right? They're like, that's kind of, I think, how they work in the comedy, where they unironically just do the things, and they know, like, this is ridiculous, and that's sort of the point. Kind of the way Hobbs and Shaw does, but again, Hobbs and Shaw, you watch this and you're like, look at all this shit you could have done. This, like, using The Rock's muscles to weigh down a helicopter. Like, that's ridiculous. But you know what's really ridiculous is two guys with one person on the other's shoulders climbing a watchtower and flipping through the air, pinwheeling and killing that man who never will know how ridiculous his death truly was.
That's the real tragedy of that character's death, is that this nameless soldier has no idea how much his death fucking rocked.
Yeah, he never gets to see that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just...
He gets kicked in the back by a pinwheeling tower of men.
Right, that's the joy, and they don't need someone smirking or trying to make jokes in every scene. It's just like, let the scenes speak for themselves.
Yeah, like you said, you
can work in genuine human moments in that, because the characters in the movie are just, like doing their thing, actually playing out a drama. So you kind of get both.
You said you compared it to Fury Road earlier, and that's like perfect, because there's like shit in Fury Road that's like, so like you have to just laugh when you see it, because it's so like awesome.
Yeah, when I saw the Doof Warrior for the first time, I laughed. That was the reaction. It wasn't like fear or awe. It was like, oh my god, because it's just so over the top that you love it.
And it doesn't take anything away from the actual real, genuine, effective emotional moments that are in Fury Road. And it's the same thing in this movie. Yeah,
it's the difference between laughing with and laughing at, I would imagine, where it's like you're laughing because of, like, I can't believe they did something that bold and outlandish, and they know that they're doing it. Whereas, like, some other movies, like, have a character who's essentially, like, making you being like, oh, look how ridiculous this all is. We can laugh at it, and it's like, we don't need that. We don't need someone to remind us. It's so much better to play it completely serious, which is what they do.
For example.
Yes.
This movie's 3.5 hours long, so the midpoint action scene comes 90 minutes in. And this is where he finds out that he finds out where it's being held. And specifically, the child's being held in a massive military compound containing all of the British soldiers, and where their governor lives, but it's this huge campus of buildings and barracks, and that child is in there. So you see him planning with his friends. Like, I've got to go in there and get her. So he's like, you see them working it out, and it's like they've come up with, there's a truck that they're going to drive in under the guise of it being like a shipment of something, and then he's going to be hiding in the back. So you think, okay, it's going to be that thing where they roll out like a cart of grain or laundry or something, and then he's like clinging to the bottom of it, and they roll that into the building, and it's going to be this tense scene where he has to sneak around, find the girl, try to get her out, and then he'll get caught, and then there'll be an action scene where he has to fight in the hallways, and then ultimately try to get her out of the building. That's what you suspect is going to happen.
Right.
Instead, you see the truck rolling up to the gates of this huge compound. You see the driver, he's nervous, worried they're going to inspect the contents. And then he steps on the gas and crashes through two gates, jackknifes the trucks, hits the brakes and spins the wheel around so it flies over sideways. They roll off the canvas cover to the truck, revealing Beam and like 20 wild animals he's brought with him.
That's why he was fighting the tiger in the beginning.
And they launched themselves out of the side of it in this slow motion where he's holding 2 torches in the air, in midair, while him and a crowd of wild predators all land among this massive army. He is there to take on all of the entire... he's not sneaking past.
The plan was to slingshot him and a fucking forest of killer predators.
And when you guys say killer
how they gathered up...
I have to know also deer.
Yeah, there's a deer in there. That's true. Like somebody gets killed by an antelope.
Yeah.
And they just start running wild, just mauling everyone in the British Army. And it's like, okay, so my animals will take care of like 10% of the British Army that is occupying India, and then I will single-handedly beat the asses of the other 90%. In which he proceeds to do that. And then partway through, the other guy, Ram, shows up, and then the big showdown between the two, because at this stage they think they're enemies, because Ram is acting as if he's a British officer, but he's actually undercover, but he can't blow his cover, so he has to fight him, and then they have this fight. And it's, in that moment, it is such a joyous thing, but they don't, for example, cut to like a character, like a British character, like,
yeah, exactly.
What?
Dropping his monocle because the tiger is flying through the air.
Yeah, look how silly this is, because in this universe, this is a thing that can happen. Now, they weren't expecting exactly this, but it's established that this is a thing that is possible, and this is one of the possible solutions to this problem. But they clearly intentionally staged it so you thought it was going to be some sort of subtle infiltration of the facility. And it is not. And then what ensues, and some of you are going to know what I mean when I say this, and some of you are not. Throughout the chaos that ensues, for every single frame of it, and there are many stages, they go across multiple locations, there are many twists and turns in the fight, there's a fight over a key to her cell that they lose, and then throughout every frame of it, it is completely clear what is going on. The geography of where everything is laid out. Where the girl is being held, where our hero is, his progress towards reaching her, it is perfectly clear at every stage. And this is something that even huge blockbusters by the most accomplished directors get wrong. Because in many scenes, the popular thing, people complain about shaky cam and fight scenes to hide the fact that your actors have not spent months training. And by the way, these two guys did spend months training, as you can tell, because they're still alive.
The Nacho dance more so destroy them both.
Yeah. If you watch like the battle scenes of The Hobbit, the new Hobbit trilogy, the bad Hobbit movies as opposed to original Lord of the Rings, there are many cases where they will just cut to generic, just people fighting. It's like filler film they had of people fighting each other. And it's not clear which side is winning, what they're trying to do, where they're trying to go. I'm telling you, it is extremely difficult to stage a scene. It looks like there's hundreds of extras or CGI extras, either one. It's a sprawling location with a bunch of action, but at every single stage, you know exactly where this guy is, how close he is to reaching his goal, where he's trying to get to. And then as there are all these twists and turns, because Ram comes in, totally thwarts his plan, then they have to fight each other. But while they're fighting each other, where he's trying to go, why he's trying to get there, it's all totally clear. So the drama in every punch and every time he gets hit and falls down is maximized because you know exactly what it means for, because this happened, he now can't get here. That fundamental simple thing gets screwed up in a lot of movies.
In another huge budget Netflix action movie, Michael Bay's Six Underground, that I had to turn that movie off halfway through, but like that is the worst example I can think of off the top of my head of exactly the problem you're talking about. Accomplished director, big budget Hollywood action movie that just completely fucks up the geography. Like I never have any idea what's happening in that movie.
especially when and I got through 6 minutes or 7 minutes, or I got through less than 10 minutes of Six Underground. But when it's something I assume Michael Bay style where it is over the top, it's really important, and that is a key to the action in this, which is that the action functions like a Rube Goldberg machine. The way Rom shows up in this scene, if you remember, is with a carriage pulled by horses that is on fire.
Yep.
I don't know if he lit it on fire. I don't know who lit it on fire.
That's right.
But it's on fire.
He unhooks the horses, so the horses rush out as projectiles of their own.
The horses are just trying to get out of there. The horses are like, "What did you bring me into?" And then the carriage goes and it hits like a post or something, and it flips completely head over heels, and it's and then it goes towards Beam,
I think, right?
Beam, thank you. Yeah, it goes towards Beam, and he has to dodge it. And so something like that, it's like you could shaky cam that, or you just show it. And
because it rules.
It's like they're showing their work where they're like, this is going to lead to this, which is going to lead to this, and we're just going to show you it with like these very clear shots, wide shots of just like, you're just going to sit there and appreciate this ridiculous thing that we set in motion. And that's very key. It's not trying to hide anything with its choreography. It wants us to see it. Yeah. It's the same with the dancing. The dancing is often just like, here's a wide two shot of both of them dancing.
The dance sequences are all very much filmed like a music video.
Yeah, or
they want you to see it.
Yeah, filmed like Singing in the Rain, filmed like old musicals that are like, we train these actors to dance for 3 minutes for this song. We're not going to cut. Why would we cut? Like that
3 minutes. I think Nachu's a little longer than 3 minutes.
Yeah. But you know
they
what
are
I mean.
Attacking that song.
Yeah, they really are. I love, by the way, when Beam gets arrested by Rom, he says, "I didn't do anything wrong," and I don't know if that's a lost in translation situation, because the dude just released
he just
so
launched
many animals,
a menagerie of killer animals
into a party that I presumably has also innocent people, like not just like the ruthless invaders, but probably like children and the help and
Listen,
stuff
man,
like that.
they're having a party while they're having a party while a stolen child is in a cage inside.
Oh, yeah.
So they made their bed.
Deserve it. Yeah.
Here's a tiger now.
But he probably has broken prison law, is what we're saying. There are probably laws on the books against what we just saw him do there. 'Cause, to be clear, we're making this sometimes sound like it's kind of a G-rated movie.
Oh, no.
The violence is extremely graphic. Like, when he unleashes these animals, you see them start just ripping the throats out of every...
I think that's part of why it works, is because they do, it is this huge over-the-top thing to do, so you it hits you like the do for you, where you're like, oh, shit! And then as it continues, you see that he really did just drop like a nuke in the center of this party. Like, those animals, there's a lot of...
It's something the Joker would do.
Yeah.
It's Joker level shit.
Yeah. Like, it's...
And not like...
It's quite a move.
Joker.
Yeah. It is. This movie is violent, yeah. Not like super violent.
I would say it's more violent than Bahubali, from what I remember. More blood. I want to say
Bahubali was more like Lord of the Rings. Like, it was more that kind, where it was a lot of like bloodless violence in my memory. Anyway,
an epic, like war story, as opposed to this, which has elements of that. But this, I don't even know how to classify this goddamn movie. I also want to note this movie does have humor. I don't want people to think it's completely serious. There's the courtship scene.
Yeah.
Where they joyfully stalk the lady, and pop her tires. Yeah. I believe.
Yeah, they pop her tires. There's a whole section of this movie where Rom is just trying to get Beam a date with this nice British lady. It becomes like kind of a buddy rom-com, which is what leads up to the Nacho dance.
Right, and I wouldn't say it's laugh out loud, but some of the jokes there, I think, worked. Like the idea of when he asks what her name is, and she says, "Don't call me ma'am, my name is Jenny," and he thinks that's the entire name, because he just doesn't, it's a translation thing. Yeah, so he's like, wow, they have really long names. Like, there's stuff like that where it's like, oh, that's cute. That's
Yeah,
that's a perfectly fine joke.
It's like cute rom-com stuff in that section for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, my point was that it's not like Paul Rudd style.
Right.
When I say it's like irony free, like there's humor, but it's not like at the expense of itself.
It's not
like,
calling us dumb for watching it. Yeah.
Yeah. Look how it's not glib. It's like, look how silly this all is. It's totally, they're all playing it totally straight. And it's weird because because of who I am and what I do, I'm so irony poisoned that it almost is weird to me when I see humans just behaving normally.
Yeah.
Right.
It's sort of like I saw an article about the new Top Gun. Have you guys seen it yet?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I have not, but there are people complaining about getting like dizzy or whatever from the air, the scenes shot from inside the planes, because they were used to a scene like that being shot with a guy sitting in a fake cockpit in front of a green screen, and then they just put in a horizon and a sky. It's CGI, and it's all done in a way that is pleasing to look at. Whereas this is Tom Cruise in an actual physical airplane where they've installed 6 cameras in the cockpit, and that sky and horizon you see spinning around is the actual sky that looks like something you could actually crash into and die.
Yes.
So actually seeing real footage of someone inside a plane was dizzying because it's like, oh, I'm looking at something real. I'm not looking at something that was built in a computer, and my brain knows it. Like, my brain knows that Tom Cruise, the actor, not Maverick, the character, that Tom Cruise, the actor, could die here.
Right.
Because he's in a machine that's going 2,000 miles an hour and is flipping upside down and is like 100 feet over the ground. It's like, oh, this human being could die. Because he did probably almost die several times while filming it. And that people found themselves like disoriented watching it. It's like because your brain knows. Your brain knows you're watching. Well, it's kind of here. Like my effect of seeing human beings talk to each other without like a layer of glib sarcasm over everything was disorienting. Yeah. Because it's like, oh, they're just saying what they mean.
Right. They're just being genuine.
They're feeling honest emotions and they're stating them and they're allowing themselves to feel them. They're not ashamed of feeling something.
Right.
Yeah.
That is a great way of putting it.
It frightens me.
I think it's because it's the thing where movies are scared that if they try to, if a superhero movie or something tries to put genuine human emotions, which isn't to say they don't, there's obviously
they do.
a lot of earned sad scenes, but I think like when it comes to like the smaller stake stuff, everybody is very, like everybody has a joke in every scene. I think it's more of like they're scared of the idea of having a scene that doesn't also have a joke in the scene, right?
For example, it bugs me, and this is an incredibly unpopular opinion. It bugs me that in the Marvel movies that Thor has the exact same sense of humor as Chris Pratt's character as Star-Lord. Like that the two of them can banter with each other, and they will make sort of like vague allusions to the fact that one of them is literally from a different universe. But at the same time, like his sense of timing and everything is still very much...
It's human.
It's very like 2021 America person raised on 90s sitcoms. You know what I mean? Like he has the same sense of, I don't know, like they can make the same glib jokes and it's all kind of sounds the same to me. And I know that part of that is what people call the Joss Whedon effect, that he kind of brought that to TV where everybody talks in like pop culture references and it's all very cutesy.
It's a situational, situational thing where like, for example, if the comedy comes from just like what's happening in the plot, like right now off the top of my head, I can't remember jokes in Mad Max Fury Road, for example, but I think when they did happen, they're like relevant to the movie and the situation of the characters. They don't just banter, right? They don't just like... No,
there's no banter in Mad Max.
Yeah. And the Marvel films have a lot of banter, and that's fine. A lot of movies have that. I think that's the sort of stuff, and I feel this way with certain types of action as well, that is totally fine, but it's going to date the film. meaning that in 10 years from now, 15, 20, it's gonna feel old. As opposed to, I would argue, a movie like Mad Max or like Die Hard, like those feel very timeless because usually the humor is from the situations and characters, not many references. You know, like Tony Stark is filled with references.
It won't even necessarily be just be dated. They can almost be inaccessible. Like if you watch like we all grew up watching like Looney Tunes, and they'll make like pop culture references about the 1940s in those. I don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
Right. Exactly. Or like Airplane, which is still pretty funny, but like half of the jokes in that are references to like
commercials and stuff. Yeah. From 1980.
Yeah, like there's jokes where it's like, oh, we have Ben and Jerry's ice cream named after the superheroes, and that's a joke. And it's like, that's cute. But then the farther you get away from that, I'm sure Ben and Jerry's will be around for a while. But you know what I mean, where it's like those are references to modern things, modern products, pop culture that are just, it's and I think that's why comedy, that tends to have that problem a lot. By design, I would say. But when you start working that into blockbusters, it creates a weird situation where, like, blockbusters are supposed to be, like, you go back and watch Jurassic Park, they don't make jokes about, like, the pop culture at the time in that.
Yeah, there's no Jay Leno jokes in it.
Yeah, they know not to. Every now and then someone will say a phrase, or something that might have been a reference, here's Johnny, etc. But, like, for the most part, it's, they know to avoid that, or they should know to avoid that. And I forget where this conversation started and how it relates to this movie. Mainly just...
No, it's just me saying that there's a difference between having humor and having irony or having sarcasm. It's because I feel like one of them doesn't... It's not as universal or it kind of undermines. And I know that a lot of people got annoyed with that element of the Marvel movies. But I think a lot of that just stems back to the fact that the first one was a Robert Downey Jr. action comedy in Iron Man, and they decided that was the template. But it's like, but that's specifically Robert Downey Jr., and he's playing a character who's a glib dickhead. Like, it shouldn't then be, 2 movies later where, like, where you can have like Thor Ragnarok, which again, that was a comedy, but it's like, okay, but you have Bruce Banner doing the same little jokey bits as everyone else. And you have Jeff Goldblum, who's literally from another planet doing, like, everybody's doing the same style of comedy. And it just becomes apparent that, well, we're not in this universe. We're watching actors do comedy with each other, which I don't know. I'm sure it's fine. It's just that this movie, RRR, I think if you showed it to somebody 100 years from now, it would play exactly the same.
Yes.
And it's a period piece, but I think they would enjoy everything about it. It's so visceral and it's so joyous. I think, it takes place 100 years ago already, but there's nothing about the way it's made where I think someone couldn't sit down and watch it in the year 2122 and get the exact same joy out of it. I think it is timeless in that way because the things that are great about it are things that are universal, like the charisma of these two guys and the way the action is staged and the emotional stakes, the way they're not afraid to take the time to build those stakes. I think that would play forever.
Right. Unless people will look back and go, yeah, this is before we made this director do every movie from here on. Of course.
Right.
Like, I don't know why you're showing me this. This is just how our government works now. Like, we've based everything off of this movie, which they really should. It's a perfect movie.
Honestly, yes.
This has a hammer execution in it.
Oh, it does, and it's not funny.
It's not funny.
No,
not ha funny.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't. Oof, that's a.
They didn't show it. They don't show it. It's not ha funny. It was more of just like, oh Christ, funny.
Yeah.
There's a lot. There's a lot of. There's the whip scene. That's intense.
Yeah. Yeah. They full on have the Braveheart scene basically, and it's
where she apparently brought her own whip.
Yeah, she did. She tosses him down a gnarlier whip because she's like, you're not whipping him good enough.
Yeah.
It's fucked up.
That is the Braveheart thing, where his thing is. It's very much too. I assume this is both, like we said, based off of historical things that happened. But it's very much like the two different types where he's becoming a martyr and like inspiring the people, while the other guy is just taking them down from the inside. And that's
the guy has to whip his friend, and at that stage he knows, like he's undercover and he's been put in charge of torturing him, and so it's this heartbreaking scene where he has to but it's one of those things where there's no point in us like spoiling it. Like once you get there, if you watch a movie and you buy into it, and I think it does a good job of like drawing you, because the style is distinct from what any movie you've seen. It is a Bollywood movie. Like it will, once you are drawn into it and you kind of are familiar with like, okay, this is how this movie works. This is how, the style is a little bit broader than what you're used to. Like it's just, once you're into, like by that point in the movie, like you should be totally feeling that, because it's violent, but not for the point of being gratuitous. You will understand why it's as horrific as it is.
It walks that line where it doesn't, like you feel the emotions of each scene, but it is its own world at the same time.
Yeah.
But, they've established pretty early, and I guess another example. Yeah, we definitely don't have to go through all the scenes or even all the action scenes, but like another good example for me of like what Hollywood needs to learn. It's a random scene, but when he's saving Ram from he's in the solitary confinement.
Oh yeah, in the like the ground cage. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like in an underground cell.
Yeah, and he has to save him by basically just crawling on the ground, and there's a light shining, and he has to avoid it. And it's like, okay, does that feel completely realistic? Not really, but we know the rules. We understand what's going on. And in this world, it makes sense. And then when he finds him, and he has to get him out of there, he does it by just tearing the prison door up.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff where I appreciate, where it's like, another movie could maybe make someone like, oh, I'm going to tie this onto here, or I'm going to make it seem like slightly more realistic, but it's like, no, just have him tear it off. The point is to get him out of the scene, and they've already established these two as like pretty much superhuman.
Exactly, yeah. They established throughout the film that both of these guys are superheroes. They're superhuman.
Right, and that's the stuff where it's like, it's all make-believe. It's all bullshit.
Yeah.
Why not just do the fun version of everything,
Yeah. And also, this guy absolutely looks like he could tear the hinges off of an underground cage door. These guys are both huge. Yeah. They're both.
But they never, like, for example, when we first realized they're superhuman, I believe it's when he lets all those animals out, and he grabs a chain that's attached to a post, and he just tears the post out, and he's swinging the post by the chain. And like before that moment, I'm pretty sure he never does anything like.
He subdues a tiger with his bare hands.
Yeah.
When we meet him,
you see him. Basically, it's his strength against the tigers, and it's the only thing that lets the tiger get free is that it breaks a rope.
Right.
But he's like physically holding it back. It's like caught in a net, and he's holding onto the ropes and is like restraining. But again, the point is they have established prior to that point that he can do that. It wouldn't be like if it was.
It's Frog on a Hot Plate, where like that guy beating up the crowd. They make it so it's kind of a struggle for him. Like it's not easy for him to take on. 3,000 people or whatever?
Yeah.
Well, that's where it differs from like Hobbs and Shaw, where they constantly, the joke is like those guys can't be hurt. In this movie, these guys, they do a great job of selling it like, oh, they're not going to make it out of this. Like this is impossible. They get hurt. They bleed.
Every fight is the fight of their lives.
Yes, the movie
does a really great job of, like we keep saying, how you feel the drama in the action sequences, even though they're extremely over the top. It does a really good job of really heightening that in every sequence, where it's like they're getting like beat to shit and they're just fighting through it because they're just so powerful. You guys, so powerful.
They're so powerful. The end. So, like, yeah, the arrow scene, I feel like we have to talk about, right?
Sure.
Because that is amazing. Because they run into the army, and I guess it's Rom. We looked it up. So he goes up to a statue that has its own bow and arrow, which that seems weird. And he takes the bow and arrow, and I believe the way he looks at the end is similar to that god. I believe that's the idea. We looked it up, and there was this is one of those things I'm extremely ignorant about.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that's the significance, because he shows up and everybody's like in awe. And then he proceeds
It's one of the... that's the one thing that it's assuming culturally.
Yeah.
It would be kind of like if you were in a culture that had never heard of Santa Claus and you tried to watch like A Miracle on 34th Street, it would be hard to puzzle out.
Right.
Because these movies don't have to explain to American audience who Santa Claus is. And again, I realized that me comparing this god that's one of the gods of one of the manifestations of Shiva or whatever, me comparing them to Santa Claus, I realized could probably trigger a worldwide boycott of this podcast.
Sure.
I'm saying that there are cultural things that movies in Hollywood don't feel the need to explain because it's understood. It's just assumed the audience knows. And so
it's like the movies don't stop and explain who Jesus is when we see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, that would have been a better example than Santa Claus. Than when I'm talking about another country's religion. or you would have in a sitcom somebody say, well, and he jumped off there like Spider-Man. They would not then have to explain, well, Spider-Man is a character. It's just assumed. Everybody knows Spider-Man is. Well, here, the fact that he is revealed to be the descendant of this god of war, whatever, and he takes on the garb of that. Like when he emerges from the flames wearing that I assume is something that no one in India, in the intended audience, needed explained. I just took it that this is me being, sheltered. I don't necessarily know what's going on.
Yeah,
right now.
But you get the idea of what's going on. I definitely knew what that it was a significant.
You understand
thing.
The significance of it, yeah.
It's also not load bearing because he then proceeds to tie grenades onto arrows and
he just starts Ramboing the shit out of people.
Yeah. In just the best way.
That's so good.
And then Beam joins in.
Not to be, I think the best comparison to try to be as sensitive as possible, it would be like when Hulk Hogan looks like he's going to lose a match, but then Hulkamania overcomes him. I think it's a lot like that.
Right. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, you don't have to explain what it means when the Hulkster starts shaking his finger.
Yeah, it's the Hulkamania. It's the love from the Hulkamaniacs in the audience that has healed his wounds, and because here the whole point is he's been grievously wounded and he can't walk, and then when he comes out from that, he's been healed, and it's
right. It's a statue of Rama, by the way, and his name is Ram. So
I literally went to Wikipedia and looked up tried to understand what it was.
Right.
But I realized that the more I talked about it, the more ignorant I would just sound.
So we can move on.
It's worth noting because it is the one thing that I think someone in an American audience would maybe find slightly confusing, like they would think they skipped a scene or something somewhere. But it's,
We were talking about the arrow scene, which escalates into, we haven't talked about the horse in the motorcycle, which comes up multiple times. They save a child near the beginning, it's 40 minutes into the credits. They save a child, and then they fall underwater, and then they shake hands underwater, and the credits start. Although it's not the credits, it's the main title, and then a montage of them just having fun.
Yeah,
which is fucking great.
Them being the best of friends. It's one of my favorite parts of the movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there's just them being buds.
They're just being pals, guys being dudes.
But I love, and then they come back at the end with one with a motorcycle, one with a horse. The motorcycle lights on fire, and he sends it into the palace, right into the royal TNT room, which I love that. Yeah. It's amazing. There's a couple moments like that where, again, it's like, who cares? Like, I love at the very end when they're like, where it's we did it, and they're getting back together with their family and stuff, and Jenny, the love interest, is this just there? And it's like, where was she? Like she disappears from the movie.
Yeah.
And then at the end she's just like there with them, and it's like, oh, okay, it's fine.
That said, you guys have both compared this to Fury Road.
Yes.
Yeah.
This does the same thing that Fury Road does, where there is a tremendous amount of labor and care into doing all of the setup and payoff stuff.
Yes.
Where the one character's necklace means something, and it's going to mean something again and again and again. Like character won't, like how this person finds out they're related to this person because he noticed this necklace, which we previously established, and then at the end of the movie he's going to lose the necklace. Going to, like, props come back again and again and again. When they have an action scene, the chaos, as you mentioned, you called it like a Rube Goldberg machine. It's exactly like that. Because this guy will kick this guy. It will knock him into a lamppost, but it's got like a big flaming brazier, like cage at the top with fire in it. It will fall down. It will set this other thing on fire. That thing that's on fire will then cause this thing to catch on fire. And then they are fighting through that fire. And because that thing is on fire, he grabs this flaming thing and he punches a tiger with it. Everything is, there's so much like storyboarding and figuring out of the location of stuff and where it's going to be and why it would be there. When we talk about like the dream, like weird, like musical logic of this, it doesn't extend to anything that affects the story and the drama, where it's like, why was this thing there? It's like, well, it's there because they showed it falling off the truck.
Right.
And that's why it was there for him to pick up.
Yes, you're right. Is that the stuff that, it's a very good distinction to make, where the stuff where it's like, screw it, it's a movie, often are things where it's like, you could write a couple of scenes sweatily explaining it, or you can just make it very simple. Like you could have a scene where someone like explains why there's TNT in that room, or you can just have TNT in that room and the end result is an explosion, and we're on board. Yeah. Whereas, like, the things that the characters do, how the characters, like, how he recognizes him and realizes that he's the guy he's hunting, or, like, that necklace that he gives him, that he then is hanging off of by, or the necklace that him and his wife have. Like, these, like, how the characters get to these emotional points is very well explained, and that's what's important. Whereas, like, having set this tone, the logic of any given scene, and that isn't to say they still don't set stuff up visually, but, like, explaining little mechanisms like the TNT, or, like, you know, oh, where did they get all the other animals? They show them just getting one tiger, and you can figure out the rest. It's like, yeah, we don't need to know, because it's so so fucking awesome that it doesn't matter.
I think at least a criticism in American movies, like American movie criticism, tends to get wrapped up in this.
I think logistics.
The how is not anywhere near as important as the why.
It's there's probably like an equation you could make, like figuring out like what level of awesomeness a movie needs to be for you to, because like the moment you start questioning a movie is the moment you're bored with a movie, right?
Yeah.
Like that's for me, is when I get bored with a movie, then I start being like, well, wait, how did that happen? How did that person get there? How did this little thing happen? And like, if it was a better movie, that you could still have all those flaws, but I just wouldn't care or notice. And as long as it's all consistent, that's really what matters more than anything when it comes to like the internal logic of something like this.
Yeah, exactly.
And they throw that out the window pretty fast. They let you know what kind of a movie it is.
There are a few things you could observe from this that, again, I mentioned this movie could straight up go in like a screenwriting class because of how well it's structured. For example, you open up on this child being stolen. So you've established like there's these emotional stakes. The next thing you see is the first hero beating the piss out of an entire crowd. The next thing you see is the other hero fighting a tiger. So look at what they've done. In introducing those two guys that way, it introduces very, very clearly, you could show this to anyone on Earth, it introduces very clearly, here are how the laws of physics work in this universe. Neither of these guys are invincible because, at least particularly Beam, is extremely afraid in his scene when he's up against the tiger. Like, he is scared. It is very clear. If that tiger catches him, it will eat him probably. And when you see Rom fight his way through the crowd, he gets beaten down multiple times and has to fight his way back. He's not superhuman. He can't fly, but he can do things that a normal person cannot do, including like other people in this universe. He is extremely strong, extremely capable fighter, but mostly he's relentless. But it establishes the tone and what's possible very early. But it doesn't start with those two scenes. If it started with those two scenes, it would be very easy to come away thinking that the movie is kind of goofy and glib and it's about how these two guys are just super masculine, whatever. You start with the child getting taken to say, no, there are emotional stakes to this movie. This is not, just goofy fun watching these two guys kick ass for 3 hours. You start with the child and then you come back with these two scenes. And in those 3 scenes, you have established very clearly, here's the type of movie you're watching. Here are the rules of the universe. I'm telling you, if anyone out there aspires to write books or movies or anything like that, give as much thought to how it starts as this movie does. Because if they had never established that the guy could fight animals and then they just had it happen later, it would be like, okay, they don't care. It's like, no, they don't care about explaining how he knows how to fight animals. They only care to make it clear that he can. And that it's not easy for him. Like, it can be done, but it's not effortless or whatever. So there is a lot of everything about how this is structured. It is a lesson to many, which I know we've talked, David and I, we did an entire podcast series about the way Hollywood movies are made now. They kind of become a mess structurally because it's sort of a group effort. Like, the writing of the movie is distributed among a bunch of producers and the star and other people. So what you get is kind of a tangled mess of set pieces that don't necessarily build to an emotional climax or make you feel invested because it's just been through so many rounds of feedback that I assume is not the way it works in Bollywood. Like, this is clear idea from beginning to end, just like Fury Road was, where he had spent 20 straight years tweaking that script. This is the kind of thing that people write about when they are obsessed with structure, the way, a screenplay is all about structure. When somebody spends years writing it, that's what they're doing. They're trying to say, okay, in this opening, we have so much we have to convey, not just these characters, but what they're about, what they're capable of, but also about this universe. That it's a historical movie, but it's also, it's not, this is not going to be a docudrama. Like, it's, it's very heightened, the reality of it. It's very, theatrical. There's same with this, same with the opening of Fury Road, where they convey so much about the universe just through the costumes and the vehicles and stuff like that we mentioned in the last podcast we did. Very similar. Like, they pack a lot of information in those opening scenes.
Yeah, I do want to note the thing, like, how well they're showing both characters and the stakes and like how badass they are. But for example, for Ram, they're literally showing what exactly the kind of person he is and he will be. Because they literally, it's see that guy out in the crowd of people who are supporting him. We don't like him. Go get him. And that's literally what he has to do for the whole movie. And he stops at nothing. He fights off thousands of people to get this man. And it perfectly sums him up. And that's just so smart.
Yeah.
It's so smart.
It's the same thing with Beam too. Like, Beam, he's frightened, but he's a guy that's of nature and really close to, like, he's clever. He said he like thanks the tiger after he traps it.
He doesn't kill it. The entire challenge is if he just had to drive a spear into a tiger, he probably could do that instantly. But their whole goal is they're trying to capture it and tame it. So they have like this concoction they come up with that'll knock it out or something. But he's very careful not to hurt it or not to kill it.
And I think what's important is how that informs their characters. Because I would argue Hobbs and Shaw does technically do that.
Yeah.
Where they show The Rock exercising and Jason Statham drinking a beer at the pub, But, like, for the rest of the film, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Like, they're just the same dude in a fight.
They're just the same dude insulting each other. And it's like, that's definitely an entertaining movie, don't get me wrong. But in terms of like how to show two characters and how different they are, and you know that they're going to collide together, like they do it so well in this movie, that you just, you could literally, you don't even have to watch it with the sound on, you know? You get through those 3 scenes, you know exactly what's at stake, so quickly, and exactly who these people are. And that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird to call a 3-hour movie efficient, but that stuff is definitely efficient.
Yeah, with shit like that.
Yeah.
There's also something I wanted to point out that's also all over Bahubali, which is very evident in this, and maybe we already touched on it, is that morality is very gray. In the sense that, well, okay, I shouldn't say that. It's more of like this guy is going undercover, and he seems like a real bastard at first, and then they go back and they say, well, here's his background, here's what happened with his father, here's what happened with his village, here's why he's so driven to do this, and he is willing to, you know, he's looking at the big picture. So and that is of course his flaw as well, but they explain it really well, and you get that like that weird thing where like characters aren't necessarily good or bad. I mean, some are definitely bad, but like where it's all kind of blurry and mixed together at first until the characters slowly figure out where they stand with each other. And I don't know. I think they did a really good job with that. And I think it's even more so. I don't want to reveal any plot points with Bahubali, but there's definitely stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where it's like people who are allies also did really bad things and have to like invest to them and stuff like that. And I don't know, that is a really smart idea. That again, I think we do somewhat here, but not nearly enough.
Not as often in blockbusters, no.
Yeah.
It's the blockbusters tend to be as simple and uncomplicated as possible. In
right.
general.
There's obviously lines that characters just can't cross. You know, like if they cross, we're not going to like them anymore. It doesn't matter. But like this definitely like plays with those lines in a compelling way. Like in a way where again the story and how these characters are going to interact and what's going to happen, you want to know, along with knowing what the next completely batshit action sequence is going to be.
Right, like for the first half of the movie, you don't really, especially if you're somebody who's you know not from the culture, you don't know that Ram was a real person. The first half of this movie, you have no indication that he's not just a bad guy.
Right, and if you remember Bahubali, it's a very similar theme, right?
Yeah,
where it's like two badasses going against each other.
Yeah, he's more clearly villainous in that movie, but this one, it is interesting that like. So the tension initially comes from them meeting and becoming friends, and like they're like genuine friends, and so you're I don't know, it's
you know it's
the best fucking movie.
Like,
it's the best movie.
It's gonna fall apart. It really is. It's man. I do also want to note there's definitely some amazing action scenes in this, but they're near the middle. It felt like they're like it's kind of when they do the dance number because they knew like. We're not doing that much action, so we better as fuck do a dance number here. Yeah,
it ramps down for a little while, but it's.
But I guess what I want to note is that like that stuff is still extremely interesting because of the character stuff, because they're doing that work.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, like these aren't Oscar-worthy performances necessarily. This isn't an Oscar-worthy story. It's just adding those elements of drama enough that you're with it the whole time. Like, there was a point where I feel like I forgot what movie I was watching. And then when it starts getting really awesome with the action again, I was like, oh, right. This is happening. I think it's right after the animals getting out. It's like when he's first captured. I believe when Beam is captured is where it slows down a little bit. Mm-hmm. Does that sound about right?
Around there, yeah. It's around the midpoint.
Here's another subtle screenplay structure thing. That I bet a lot of people... Okay. If you've ever watched an action movie that has a ton of big action set pieces, but it was you felt like you weren't engaged in it. Obviously, if the characters are just bad and boring, that's one reason. But there's a structure thing that can cause that. a lot of bad or boring action movies, the structure is the heroes learn through the inciting incident that they need to do blank. They need to recover this MacGuffin, okay? So then the structure of the movie is they head toward that goal, they get attacked by the bad guys and win. They head toward the goal, get attacked by the bad guys and win. They head toward the goal, get attacked by the bad guys, win. And it's just a series of like narrow escapes and then defeating various attacks by the bad guys. Because if whoever sat down and wrote it just figured, well, this is action. This is how it works. They're trying to get from A to B, and then they have to overcome a series of obstacles. That's actually very boring because you watching it know that the movie's not just going to end 25 minutes in when the good guys all get killed by the bad guys.
Right. It'd be a hell of a flex if they did that.
Yeah.
If they they cheated the runtime by having just like black screen for the rest of it. Someone should do that, but go on. Yeah.
So the good action movies that you have liked is that every time there's an action scene, it totally resets the chessboard. That the characters, when they come out the other side of that scene, they now realize something new, or one of their people has been killed or abducted, or the goal they thought they were going after. This is a big thing in Pixar movies. They realize, oh, actually, the thing I thought I wanted is not what I need, and it redirects them. Or the place where they thought they were going to, they realize it won't solve their problems. We have to do this instead. That's good structure where the action scenes aren't just noise, and the scenes are not just doing violence to the characters. They're doing violence to the plot too. Like Aliens. Yeah. Jim Cameron's Aliens is very good about this. Every time they encounter the aliens, it totally changes the stakes. Like their ships getting blown up when they think they're going to escape. Like they think they've got that safety net. They can have the ships come down and take them off and the crash. It's not just there to show off an explosion. It totally changes their options for what they can do. And it totally changes what they're trying to do, what they can do. Good. This movie does that very well. And I think even the dance sequence like resets, like how she sees him and their position, like their attitude toward the British or whatever, and because they've kind of shown that guy up. At every stage, there's a big action scene. Like when he goes and tries to rescue the girl and he unleashes all those animals. Well, it doesn't work. He winds up losing to Ram and getting to prison. Like it totally changes where you thought the movie was going. And so if any of you out there, I'm sure you have some aspiring writers in your audience because we talk a lot about like the scripts and script structure, things like that. Keep that in mind. Don't ever just say, you know what, things have been quiet here. We need to add an action scene. The audience can tell if there's an action scene and then once the scene is over, it simply restores the status quo. Like the characters are just right back where they were before the loud stuff happened. They'll get bored.
Right.
And they won't know why they're bored, but they're bored because the noise occurred, but it didn't affect anything. You'll be shocked by how many movies do this.
It's good to get ahead of that because if you don't do that, a producer is going to say, we need an action scene there. And you won't know how to put it in. Then it's going to become like an unmotivated action scene unless you think about it early and get ahead of it. Like that's definitely something to think about because it's both. We need an action scene every 15 pages, 10 pages sometimes, but also it's just like, yeah, make sure you can figure out then what's the point of it.
The advice you'll get sometimes like, well, have some bad guys show up with a gun.
Right.
You got to shoot out, then you escape, and then you go have the meeting you were going to have anyway. It's like, that's boring to people. It takes more than just a bunch of stuff happening on screen to keep people entertained. Right. That doesn't engage them. So it's got to be, the guy that showed up and tried to shoot you. It turned out that's the guy you thought was your friend. It's got to be something that sends things off in a different direction.
Yeah,
and
this movie's really good
say
at that.
This does that. Yeah. Yep. Again, not that many action sequences, but like it does it. But it also like I love when they save that little boy. Like the only reason for that to happen is to have them see each other.
Yeah, them to meet and become friends and united
and do their
over
little
this.
hand signals and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's the idea of like, okay, you're going to have it. Should we have a train crash? Absolutely.
Yeah, of
we
course.
should have a train light on fire and go off this bridge. How do they save it? Do they just like to get them from under the rubble? Like, absolutely not. They have to jump off this bridge and have a rope tied to each of them and swing together. Like,
They save him with Cirque du Soleil.
They just jump off the bridge? Like, no, absolutely
Yeah,
not.
absolutely
One of them's on a horse
plan-
and one of
Get out
them's
of
on
my
a
office.
motorcycle.
Yeah.
A plan that Rom communicates to Bean with just a series of hand motions.
Completely,
Oh,
like 3 hand signals, and it
As if-
means this elaborate plan to him.
Yeah.
like the way you would signal to someone who you're trying to get their car to, you signal to them to turn it off by doing like twisting your, like turn the key off. It's as simple as that. It's like he makes a little motion like, okay, we're going to tie this rope, this 150 feet of rope to each other, and they're going to each jump off opposite sides of the bridge and swing down like a pair of pendulums, and we're going to meet in the middle and snatch the kid out of water. I'm going to hand him off to you. Then you're going to wrap a flag in water and wrap it around and protect him from the flames. Because, again, there's a train that is exploding this entire time. This is something this is a plan that can only make sense in the context of a train has exploded and run off of the side of a bridge on top of a small child. And this is the thing you do. And they communicated with the same hand motions you would give to somebody to have them turn on a light or answer the phone. It's just wonderful. It's played perfectly straight. And again, when you're doing your outline for your script, this scene is just the two guys meet.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's got to be a scene where they meet each other. And this is where somebody, this writer, I don't know if the director wrote the script or if they have a team of people, whoever.
He's credited as writing it, yeah.
It's like, okay, so every movie has a scene where they meet, and they could just be sitting next to each other at a bar or coffee shop or whatever. But it's like, no, they have to they have to recognize in each other. It's like, oh, this guy also is superhuman like me.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's about knowing what movie you're making, especially where this, like, I keep getting reminded of Moonfall, which I understand Roland Emmerich, different type of director. Some people might argue Moonfall is not as good. But it's why I appreciate Moonfall, which is that they asked that question, can we put more in this? And it's like, yeah, why not? We're already making a movie about the moon falling. Like, we have nothing to lose. It would, like, there's no restraint here, because there shouldn't be in this case. And the only thing we need to keep in mind is trying to tie all this together in a way that isn't complete gibberish and breaks the audience brain, which, yeah, that's kind of where Moonfall falls apart. But it's the same principle here where it's like, can we do more? And it's like, absolutely. Why not do more? You know, like, as you're saying, like, it also gets out who these characters are, why they know each other, why they get along. They're both heroes. So it's really just like they both need to do something heroic, and we need to show that they're able to communicate without speaking, because that does play in later.
Yeah.
They pay that off.
It's the unspoken bond of heroes.
Yeah, and so like the how doesn't matter. So it's like, well, why not make the how awesome? And they're like, yes, absolutely. It's just it's like the opposite of a cynical view of how movies work, where it's like they're all formulas. It's all silly. It's all make believe. So why not do something amazing with that fact? And that's what I really appreciate about this filmmaker.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Do you guys know if his other movies are on Netflix, or do you know where they can be found? Okay,
Jason, you should watch them immediately.
Yeah, definitely Bahubali. There's both parts of that are currently still on Netflix.
Yeah, I would.
Bahubali, I think.
Let me look up the official spelling. It's
Let's do this in real time.
All right,
this is for the listeners who are going to want to go.
That's true. Oh, it's okay. Yeah.
BAA, like a lamb, like a ba. Hub, like a hub, like Pornhub, and Ali, like the movie Ali.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Bahubali.
You nailed it.
I haven't seen Bahubali as recent. I'm gonna say I think I might like Bahubali more because that's 2 movies and it's like a real epic. And I actually think this, as hard as this movie goes, I'm pretty sure Bahubali goes way harder. Like in terms of the action, but
there is some pretty wild stuff in those movies.
Yeah.
But you should, everyone listening should definitely check that out, especially if you watched RRR and really liked it.
I believe Bahubali, like everybody's seen the GIF, I believe, of a group of warriors forming a ball on a catapult and getting catapulted and like rolling with their shields, and that's Bahubali. So if that gives people context.
I have seen that. Okay.
Yeah. It's definitely like
it's
a
like
meme
this
almost.
It's this same tone in like a Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones style movie.
Yeah, which I guess that's why I think I might like it more, is because it really lends itself to that.
Yeah.
To like Lord of the Rings epic, because that's like all about being big. And the character is established as superhuman, I believe, right away. So the things he does is even more outrageous.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's take these action scenes and apply them to gigantic battle scenes, like Lord of the Rings, like scale battle sequences.
Yeah, it fully rules.
It fully rules.
Like
all
this
these movies.
film.
Yeah. And again, Bahubali, the beginning is almost 3 hours long. It's 2 hours, 40 minutes. And that's just part 1. The conclusion is also 2 hours, 40 minutes. So yeah, you're going to get like a solid over 5 hours of this. And you're going to love it. You're going to love it. We should probably do it on one of our movie nights.
Oh, we definitely should. I think we should probably wrap this episode up.
Yeah, I feel like I haven't talked enough about this movie.
It's so weird.
And yet we've talked so much about it.
I feel like we've barely scratched the surface and we're coming up on 2 hours.
I think it's because, and I don't know whose instinct this was, but it was good to like not explain what happens in the plot too much. One of the last things I want to point out is just obviously they're not the main people, and the main actors are fantastic. But big shout out to all the actors playing British people who knew exactly what they were supposed to be.
Yeah, they're just ghouls.
They're just ghouls. They're just British stereotype ghouls with like mutton chops and tea and like why I never fucking attitudes. And it's like, you are exactly what you needed to be. That's great.
It's so interesting because the new Top Gun movie, they famously don't say what country they're attacking because they have to fly like there's a rogue nation. And I'm not going to spoil the plot. They have to go fly in but since after watching RRR, I've decided it's England.
Yeah. It's got to be England.
That they're bombing the British.
Of course.
And they just couldn't say that because it wouldn't be politically correct,
right?
But that we all secretly know that's who.
Yeah, we know who.
Below under the visor of those pilots, it's a guy who looks exactly like the evil overlord.
Yeah, it is just Ray Stevenson.
Got those exact mutton chops. Yeah, it's exact
as Scott. I don't know why it tickled me so much that the villain is just Scott.
Yeah.
Like they just keep talking about the evil Scott, and like that's I'm sure that's a name that existed in the 1920s, but it's just it feels very like
maybe the name of an actual historical figure for all I know.
Right, but they don't. His name is Scott Buxton is the character's name, and you'd think they'd call him like Lord Buxton or something, but they keep just
Governor
saying,
Buxton, but they call him Governor Scott.
Yeah, they just keep calling him Scott.
It's like Governor Tim.
I love that instinct because it's like it feels disrespectful and it's like fuck.
It feels like you're patronizing a child when you do that way.
Like, all right, Scott, whatever, man. It's
I mean, I don't know. I guess that's how British titles work, right? Because it's Sir John, right? Not Sir.
I don't know. I don't care. Scott.
Anyway,
Scott just doesn't feel like a name that existed before the 80s, to me at least. All right.
Yeah.
Are we done? Do we have anything else?
No.
To say?
I mean, I could talk for hours about Scott, but
no. If you've got Netflix, it won't cost you anything to at least try to watch this movie. For me, once I start watching it, I find it difficult to turn it off because like, well, I'll stop watching it during the first.
Once I hit this part, yeah,
the first
and then like, oh wait,
part.
but this part's coming up. Yeah,
It's like, well, no, I'm not gonna turn it off before blank happens. So if anything, I feel bad that we have given away some things that happen, but I know that like that's some people would not have watched it just based on us saying, go watch this Bollywood movie. So hopefully we've told you just enough that you want to. I assure you, it will not lessen the feeling of seeing any of this happen from having, heard us talk about it.
Yeah, I could describe Niagara Falls to somebody, right? But you still want to go see it, yeah. All right. Well, Jason, thank you so much.
I'm supposed to plug my book. Plug
your book.
Do it.
People have never listened to one of the shows before. I make my living as a novelist. The new one that is up for order is called If This Book Exists, You're in the Wrong Universe. It's a sequel, one of several sequels to the novel John Dies at the End, which got made into a movie, which is on HBO Max last time I checked, or any of the streaming services. And yes, people do buy my books. But people sometimes ask me, does anyone, when they hear on podcast, like you say the title of a book, are they actually going to remember it and go buy it later? I'm telling you, they will if you mention it enough times.
Yeah.
If you're sure to bring it up every time you're on, after 3 or 4 times, they will finally relent and say, okay, I'll go check it out. It's just that people usually have to hear it more than once. That's the key.
Yeah, it helps. I think you're really good at picking titles, because it helps to have titles like the ones like the ones you come up with too.
Yeah,
that is. We are going to pretend that is a quirk of mine and not me being from the internet where titles are everything,
right? And
that it's not an actual intentional marketing thing on my point, because like the book prior to this one was called Zoe Punches the Future in the Dick. The idea is that if you are browsing either on a shelf or scrolling through Amazon book recommendations and you see that title or see the title John Dies at the End, that you'll say, huh, and that one out of every, 200 people that make that noise will click on it and then buy it. But my entire career has been made out of writing the first book that had a title that made enough people say, huh, right. That's fun. It's funny. It's kind of funny that you get the way the ending.
I still remember buying the book from Barnes and Noble, and the cashier had that exact reaction.
That's great.
The second book in the series is called "This Book is Full of Spiders. Seriously, dude, don't touch it." The third is called "What the Hell Did I Just Read?" So, yeah, that is a theme. I spend a lot of time trying to think up those titles, but it makes things less funny when you tell people that you actually devoted a lot of thought to it. It's so...
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah, you gotta play it cool.
Yeah.
Effort is not funny. It never is.
I guess I should plug our
do
Patreon.
That thing, Dave.
Patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. If you go on there, if you got $5, just $5 a month, you get access to a bunch of podcasts like Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and Spiel Boys. You can get custom episodes if we just watch, that's a tier on there.
You can.
We also watch movies with our patrons every Friday night. I am going to try to figure out, Bahubali is 3 hours long, so we'd have to figure that out. But come on, gotta watch Bahubali one of these nights.
You can probably just watch this one too.
Yeah, you're right. Oh yeah. So yeah, that's what we do. You guys should people should check it out, and also give us reviews wherever you listen to podcasts. Usually like Apple Podcasts. I don't know if there's other reviews you can do.
Probably not. I think reviews only exist within Apple. We also have a store. Head over to GameFullyUnemployed.com where you can find a link to our Teespring store where we have all kinds of cool original artwork and designs you can get on t-shirts, stickers, mugs, posters, all sorts of things. So check that out.
Yes.
And check out RRR.
Yeah.
Do it. It will ruin all other movies for you.
Yep. You don't even have to use a different key. It's just R.
Yeah.
They make it so easy for
Yeah, it's very easy to watch. It's right there on Netflix. You just press that R button, boom, it's in front of your eyes.